women are perpetually living in time debt right now, where basically you wake up, you make the list, which is why I hate lists. Your goal for the whole day is to check everything off the list. But every time you check off one, three more get added, right?
You're listening to Overwhelmed Working Woman, the podcast that helps you be more calm and more productive by doing less. I'm your host, Michelle Gauthier, a former overwhelmed working woman and current life coach. On this show, we unpack the stress and pressure that today's working woman experiences. And in each episode, you'll get a strategy to bring more calm, ease, and relaxation to your life.
Hi, friend. Today I'm talking with someone who feels like a total kindred spirit. Her name's Megan Sumrall, and she is a former corporate process improvement expert. Same thing I used to do, fun fact. And she turned into a time management coach who's helped over 10,000 women create more calm and order and breathing room in their lives. What makes Megan's approach different and why I really wanted to have her on to share her approach with you guys is that she's created a feminine time management system that works with your life, not against it. She is not focused on rigid routines or perfect calendar. She's all about how to realistically plan your week. And she leaves room in the calendar for uncertainty and caregiving and emotions and things that we don't think ever would get a place on our calendar. So when you listen to our conversation, you'll hear why most productivity systems were built for men and why they're not serving us. Of course, they're not. What time debt is and how to break free from it, and then how to build a weekly plan that protects your time and your sanity. So if you're sick of chasing an impossible schedule and feeling defeated at the end of every week when you can't do everything that you had on it, this episode will give you hope and some clear direction. I have to say, when I was recording this episode, I had a cold and my microphone also sounds terrible. So I apologize in advance for the poor sound quality from here on out. Thanks for listening today, and I hope you enjoy Megan as much as I did.
Hey, Megan, welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad you're
Hello.
here today. I feel like this is just a coming together that was meant to be because we
Yes.
both talk about overwhelm and time management and so many similar things. And, people might say, like, why do you want to interview someone who's so similar to you? But I love finding out just the differences and like some great way that you might think about something versus how I think about something that we can share with the audience. And so one of those things that I have followed and admire about what you're doing is the way that you talk about time management. So before we jump into that, but I can't wait for you to share with everybody the way that you look at time management. Will you just tell us a little bit about how you got here? Like, why did you become a time management guru?
Yeah. In third grade, when my teacher said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" This was not it. My answer was
This
not,
wasn't even a
teaching
thing.
time management. No.
Line on Zoom, on video.
Right. So like you, I actually have a corporate background for over 20 years. I was a math major, landed in the corporate IT software space, kind of sheer luck out of college. And so I spent over 20 years in and out of numerous software organizations across a lot of different domains, ranging from e-commerce to healthcare to aviation, telecommunications, all of that. And my career really landed me in the quality assurance space. And over the course of that, I ended up getting a number of certifications and trainings all around process improvement, optimizations, streamlining. If anyone listening is in that space, if you've heard of Lean Six Sigma, Agile, all of that, I have all of those certifications, project management, certified Scrum trainer, all of that.
I
And
have to
so-
pause. Oh my gosh, I was a Six Sigma black belt. No one ever
Same.
knows what that is. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, Megan. Okay, we were meant
Yeah,
to be
see,
friends.
we were meant to be
We are
together.
kindred spirits. That is so
Yeah.
like, is that karate? No, it's all about process improvement and how to make
Yes.
things the most efficient, which as a gift for us also helps you help people do that. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. I
Exactly,
just got really
exactly.
excited
Yeah.
that someone said Six Sigma on the podcast. Go on.
And there's a reason I bring that up because it ties into what I do now and how I created what I created. So towards the end of my career, not knowing it was going to be the end of corporate, really the role that I was serving at that time is I would go into large software organizations and essentially recreate all their systems from the ground up to build their software better, faster, cheaper, higher quality. So I got married later in life. We started a family later in life after struggling with fertility and all of that. And so I kind of entered motherhood on the later end
Mhm.
and was, just going through the paces as working moms do, work kids really hard. And I had one day where I thought, I'd done everything right. My daughter was about 2 and it was a Friday. And I could still remember it so clearly. And I'd gotten up early so I could finish work early. I had the snack bag the night before, like all the things so we could just go have an afternoon at the park. And I was pushing around the swings, and I live in the South, so everybody's chatty down here. And the woman next to me in conversation innocently just asked me, "What do you do for fun?" I was like, huh, I didn't have an answer. And I didn't even know I didn't have an answer. Like, I didn't realize my life had transitioned so much that I couldn't answer, "What do you do for fun?" anymore.
One
And
of
it's not
those
that I
poignant
wasn't,
moments where you're
yeah.
like, "Oh, crap."
And it's not like, I was having fun at the park, right? That's not the same as what do I do for me for joy in my life. And so I went home, kind of had a midlife crisis that night after getting my daughter to bed. And I sat in that space for a while and I was like, what happened? How did Megan get from there to here where now I don't like I don't even know who I am. Some days I don't even know how to dress as corporate mom. Like I don't know. I felt like I completely lost my identity. And then thankfully, it kind of hit me that, hey, Megan, you do this for a living. You go into chaotic spaces and create new structure and processes to align with their values. So I was like, why don't you take yourself on and apply everything that you do in your corporate life to your calendar, to your time? Because the fact was, when I dug into it, I realized what was missing was me.
Mhm.
Like, everything was getting done. From the outside looking in, it looked like the perfect life, right? I had the job, the house, the kid, the dogs, all that. I was really unhappy and unfulfilled. And the fact is, my calendar was completely full of everybody and everything, and I was
Mm.
nowhere to be found on it. So I threw away the planner I'd been using for over 20 years. I was a Franklin Covey, like die hard, went to all
Me
their
too.
courses, the whole shebang. And I was like, let's start from the ground up and figure out, how do I juggle all the things I'm juggling without losing myself in the process and without being perpetually overwhelmed. So I essentially created a new way of controlling the chaos, if you will, and developed this weekly and monthly planning system. And I was doing a keynote at a women in tech conference and was at one of like the tables, and the women, we were all chatting, and they're like, how do you manage all of this? And so I started sharing some of my calendar and how I do stuff. Well, I get an email from a group that was there saying, can we hire you to teach us how you plan your time?
Oh,
I was like,
interesting.
that's interesting. So I had to sit with that for a little bit. And I was like, is this something I could turn into a repeatable framework? Like, is this something I could teach people on? So I reached back out and I said, hey, you know, I've never shown this to anybody, but I'd be willing to do that if you just give me honest feedback. Like, I'm happy to mentor you on this. So I guided these 5 women through what I was doing, transformed their lives. I found my missing passion and joy. And I was like, this is it. When I saw their life transform and experience that process of like turning this into a repeatable system, that is what planted that seed in me of, this is how I want to spend my life. So, had to think about it for a while. And I'm happy to say that at the time we're recording this, this is my 5-year anniversary fully just into this business. We've served over 10,000 women in over 15 countries, teaching this time management system that is specifically for women because we need something different than our male counterparts.
That is amazing. 10,000 women's lives improved by learning how to manage their time better. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What kind of results? What would be just like typical results for people who do this program? And then I want to ask you some questions about how it actually works.
Yeah. So, the number one thing, and I know this is what you hear from all the women you work with as well, is they're no longer overwhelmed. They're like,
Mm-hmm.
their life feels spacious, feels like there's room to breathe. And you're no longer feeling, I always feel like I was in that whack-a-mole game or like spinning the plates. They were always spinning, but I was always in that mild anxiety. If one goes, it's all going to fall apart, right? Like just hanging on.
Yes.
And
Oh, I
so
can feel the
now,
stress in my chest when you
yeah,
even just remind me of that feeling. Yuck.
yeah. And you know that, and I always use this phrase of women are perpetually living in time debt right now, where basically you wake up, you make the list, which is why I hate lists. Your goal for the whole day is to check everything off the list. But every time you check off one, three more get added, right? You go to bed, the list is not done. So you feel like a failure when you never could have done the list in the first place. So maybe there's 8 things left that didn't get done. Well, you wake up the next day already 8 in debt. And now you
Yeah.
go add 15 more to it. And you're living in this perpetual cycle of time debt, day after day after day. And it
Yes.
wears on you mentally, it wears on you physically, wears on your soul. And
Yes.
so what we're doing, the way getting out of overwhelm looks for the women I work with is now they're no longer in time debt. Now
That is
they've got a
amazing.
savings account of
Of
time
time. Yes.
that's
Yes.
there for
Yeah,
them.
because when you're in time debt, you somehow get like a meeting cancellation or some white space on your calendar. You're like, I better grab that list and get back to it because you're always making up for lost
Yeah.
time. So
Yep.
just to be where you're in charge of your time and you can sit through that white space and be
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
being very proactive instead of constant state of
yes.
reactivity.
Yes. Well, the thing that first drew me to the way that you're talking about managing time is the idea that it is based on a feminine calendar. So, will you just tell us
Yes.
what that means and like why you created it that way?
Yeah, and so I very openly say this is a feminine time management system, and there's 3 key things that differentiate this from pretty much every productivity, put that in quotes, system that I have researched, been introduced to, or have tried. And all of those have been created by men. So, first and foremost is, even when I look back at my Franklin Covey days, let's just talk about the technology. Technology has had a massive impact on our time because when you think about, when I think about my life when I first started working, so I'm in my 50s. So when I started working, there was no cell phones, there were no laptops. Like we didn't even, the internet was kind of like, ooh, exciting and new. So what this meant was when I was at work, I was only at work, right? And then when I went home, I was only at home. No one was reaching me. Well, now we walk around with computers in our pocket that are more powerful than the computer systems
For
I first worked
sure.
on,
Yes.
right?
Much, much more.
And so it is this kind of Amazon Prime now of everything's instant right now. And so we have information. A study I read from like 5 years ago was showing that the volume of data that we're consuming from our mobile devices is equivalent of watching 18 movies a day.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that
Oh my
nuts?
gosh. No, that's sort of terrifying.
So if you're going through a traditional masculine time management program where basically they're teaching you structured time blocking and create your perfect week, I'm sorry, where in there does it say how we're staying on top of 18 movies a day in the form of the 12 portals from your kids' student activities and different schools and different teachers and different lessons, right? The onslaught of emails coming at you, the notifications from the portals that you need to stay on top of. And a lot of this tends to fall on traditional caregiver roles, right? So if my daughter's sick, the first phone call they're making is not to my spouse. They're calling me
Right.
first, right?
Yes.
So we need to acknowledge like that we're in information overload and masculine systems are not addressing this. They're just giving very caveat things of like, just turn off your notifications. Well, that's because they know someone else is going to get that phone call.
Yes. Yes. Oh
Someone
my
has to be
gosh.
there.
Have
So
you,
we need to acknowledge this and create a way for us to, how can we plan? I call this planning for uncertainty. How can we plan our time when we know we are the primary person absorbing the uncertainty, right? So I
yeah.
have to create a plan that looks very different than my husband's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, the second thing here is just looking at the sheer data of the change of the number of women that are now working than 20, 30 years ago, right? The number of women that are responsible for being the primary caregiver and working adds a whole caveat of responsibilities that traditional masculine planning systems are not talking about, right? They're not addressing the fact that there's a reason why at 2 a.m. you wake up and have those list making sessions in your bed, right? I've got the birthday party, and what about this? And I noticed the last time they were together, this kid wasn't getting along with that, or I'm noticing my dad's not driving as well. Like all of that is not being addressed in a masculine planning system.
Yeah, there's
And
no
then
time
this,
block where you're considering the time
yeah,
block's like 2 a.m. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. And then bottom line is biology, science. Men and women are different. Our brains are different. And so there's a reason a masculine planning system usually is always trying to teach this concept of creating the perfect week as your solution for hyperproductivity. And a book, I mean, I absolutely love this book called Buy Back Your Time. Dan Martell, always tell like entrepreneurs they should totally read it, but don't read his chapter on weekly planning, because even he is teaching this concept of, well, you create your perfect week. Like every Tuesday, Thursday from 10 to 2 is when you do meetings. Every Monday, right? It's just rinse and repeat. Well, that's because their brains, the chemistry in their brains is staying pretty consistent day after day, week after week. You look at what's going on in a woman's brain related to our hormones, that cocktail in our brain is changing daily,
Yes.
daily, right? Which is why when you think about it, there are weeks where you're like, I got more done in those 4 days than anybody could do in 4 months, right? And
Absolutely.
then you have the week where you're like, I got nothing, right? No creativity, you're having a hard time making decisions, all of that.
Staying awake even.
Staying
Yes.
awake, yeah. And so you take the day-to-day fluctuations and then you compound that with, you know, starting in your 20s versus to perimenopause to postmenopause, that just escalates all of that. And so you have to have a system, a planning system that has an understanding and awareness that time blocking and structuring the perfect week can be an absolute recipe for disaster for women because our biology is not designed in a perfect week.
Yeah. Yeah. Which that makes so much sense. I love the thought of creating time management for the primary caregiver or even just the feminine. Even
Yeah.
if you don't have children, but you have a menstrual cycle and different hormones, that
Yeah.
can be
And
something.
even if you're not a caregiver, it's interesting. It's called the limbic part of your brain, which is our emotional center. In a female brain, it's significantly larger than a male brain. We handle emotion more. So whether you're a mom or caring for aging parents, the fact is we have a lot more going on the emotional centers of our brain, which is why we oftentimes need a little space, either before or after, or for me, on like bookending anything on my calendar that requires large emotion from
Yeah.
me.
Yeah,
Whereas
absolutely.
a lot of times men don't need that because that section of their brain it's not as active and it's not as physically large as ours. So
Yeah.
understanding all of these nuances of how we're different, well, then that means we're going to need planning systems that support those differences.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an interesting observation. I mean, even the way that I used to care for people on my team at work.
Exactly.
Just they
Yes.
weren't my kids, but I cared about them. I knew all about their lives. I knew what they might be worried about. It's just human
Hmm.
nature for women to think like that. Um, do you know Nate Bargatze, that comedian? Do you know who I'm talking about?
He's our number one
Oh my
favorite. And I
gosh.
know you're thinking of that. His
He
kid doesn't
was
know what his school bus is.
Yes, exactly. He tells it in his stand-up that his daughter missed the bus on the way home on the first day of kindergarten, and they called him, and he's like, "Why did you call? You know this is the dad's phone number, right? Like, why did you call me?" And then he said, "Call any mom. Any other mom in the class probably knows, what bus my
Yeah.
daughter
I
rides."
love when he's like, the only time you call the dad first is if there's two dads.
Yeah,
Otherwise, always
exactly.
call the mom.
Always call the mom first, and then they're like, he said, "Okay, so do I need to come and get her?" "Yes, come and get her." And he's like, "Okay, what's the name of her school?"
What's
I'm
the
like,
name of the
"Yeah,
school?
exactly." Oh my gosh, that is exactly it. So yeah, there's no time block for that. So I know you can't teach us the whole program on this
I know.
podcast, but like, where do people start if planning the perfect week isn't the thing they should do? Just very high level, what do you teach them to do?
Yeah. So I call this a bottom-up time management system instead of a top-down. And a lot of people that teach that are kind of get excited about teaching productivity or, life skills or whatever. And I've been to conferences like this where you get in a room and they guide you through some process to help you figure out what your long-term goals are, right? Whether it's a visioning, there's so many ways you can do it, maybe the 5 years, and then they teach you how to like break that goal down into actionable steps, right? And you leave so motivated. You're like, yes, I'm going to go home and finally start doing those things that I said I wanted to do. And then you walk in your front door and the reality of your life smacks you upside the head because you've probably been living in time debt and you're drowning. And you're like, I can barely figure out how to get through tomorrow. How am I supposed to take this first step on this book I've decided I'm going to write or whatever it
Yeah.
is you've left that round? Well, that's what I call top down, where we're starting from the big picture. And then the problem is they're failing you because they're not getting you to
To the
stop drowning
details. Yeah.
first.
Yes.
So this is why I say I teach from the bottom up. So we start with mastering weekly planning, because when you learn how to master your weekly planning, this is what gets you out of time debt. You can't even begin to think about those great goals and dreams and projects till you get your day-to-day life out of chaos mode. So at its heart, and notice I say weekly planning and not daily planning. Again, a lot of experts out there teach, wake up, make do your brain dump for the day, identify your top 3. For some reason, everyone says identify your top 3. I've done some deep dive research on this. I've yet to find any scientific background into why everyone says find your top 3. But someone said find your top 3. And then they tell you just focus on those. And then when those are done, then you can focus on everything else. Well, now there's a million things wrong with that for women. Maybe it is a day where none of the top 3 are things that are happening that day, right? Maybe you've got a day that's full of dentist appointment, doctor appointment, 12 meetings, the air conditioner repair guy coming, right? And I structure my time where sometimes I have days where it's like, today's the day that all that little stuff's getting done. But then tomorrow's a day where I get this big block of time to go focus on something, right? And plus, maybe it's the day where there's more than 3 top priorities, right? Sometimes that happens. So at its heart, this weekly planning system is something, and people can pick and choose when they choose to do it. I have women that work unusual schedules, like they're nurses. So maybe they're off Monday, Tuesday. So they do their weekly planning, Wednesday to Tuesday versus Monday to Sunday. You get all the flexibility you need there. But what we're doing is we are collecting everything that's competing for our time for the upcoming week. And then we're creating our roadmap on our either digital or paper calendar, showing us with specificity of when we're doing those and how long we're going to be spending on them. And this sounds very like, well, of course, Megan, like that's what calendars are for. But here's the subtle difference. What most people do today is their calendar shows appointments, right? So like you and I having this call, or you've got your dental appointment or soccer practice or whatever. And what goes on their calendar is usually things that involve other people, right? You have accountability with someone else. Then separately is the list of everything that needs to get done. And so you're jumping around all day from a commitment with someone else to now you've got open space, and then you go to look at the list and go, okay, which thing should I do now? Right? And operating this way, there's a whole other episode we could do on this, creates severe decision fatigue. Every time you're looking at a list going, what do I pick now, is decision fatigue. And in decision fatigue, your response is going to be to make really bad choices. You're going to pick the low-hanging fruit, usually a thing that really doesn't matter, and you're never going to get to the big stuff. So through this, we start with a 5-step weekly planning process, and then we learn the 10-step. And before you think, Megan, I'm overwhelmed, how could I do a 10-step weekly planning process? I do this in 15 minutes every week. All right, this is not something that takes hours to do. We actually convert all those things that would live on your traditional to-do list into appointments on your calendar, appointments with you. But there are some nuances to this related to that uncertainty, right? Because what a lot of women will do is if they're being, okay, I'm going to start blocking my calendar for stuff. Well, now they're blocking it from sun up to sundown. So then if that emergency hits at 10 a.m., now it's a domino effect for the
Yes.
entire week, right? So part of this process is learning how to calculate what your uncertainty number is based on your unique life as it is
Mm,
today.
that's an
So,
interesting concept.
yeah, so I know during my working hours, I work between 23 to maybe 25 hours a week, basically when my daughter's at school. I know that I need to make sure I have a good 4 hours every week protected on my calendar during work time for things that are going to come up that I don't know about that I will need to handle for work. And I also know I'm going to need at least 2 hours every week for what I call household COO stuff. Things that I don't
Mhm.
know is going to happen. The forms, the paperwork, the trip to the Michael's for the school project, the lawnmower breaks, the whatever. And so
Yes.
because I know this, think of it like an emergency fund, right? So a lot of financial advisors be like, hey, just put away $100 a month into an account so that when the water heater breaks, the money's there for you. Well, we're learning how to build an emergency fund into our week every single week so that when those things happen, you can absorb them without it derailing your entire week. And so
That
how
feels
we
so like just even thinking ahead that if something were to come up, that would be fine because I know their
yeah.
space feels so much better than like, "Oh, what am I getting? I got to move this from there and this to there."
Yeah,
And
and now
so
this
I
isn't
love
gonna get
that.
done, or now I'm gonna have to work on Saturday when I didn't want to, or
Yes.
stay up late or get up early. And, people will tell everyone, "Oh, yeah, well, just make sure you have a little white space on your calendar." It's like, well, when and how much? And so we have to learn the right way to do that because it's different for everybody. So that's
Yes.
one of the first things that we all learn, and mine has changed. I used to be even when I was using this planning system when I was in corporate for a while, I got stuck managing a support team, did not love that. But I realized by calculating my uncertainty, I'm like, I have to block off 90 minutes every single day. I have to protect that on my calendar at work because I always have at least an hour and a half of unplanned customer support emergencies. And so then my planning for uncertainty meant I had blocks every day protected. Now it just means I kind of changes week to week, but I don't need it every day. I just know I need 4 hours over the course of the week to be able to absorb those emergencies because I'm not dealing with level one, you know,
Yes.
client
Yes.
down. I'm not saving
Yes.
lives here. So it's stuff
Yes.
that can oh, well,
Yeah.
I'll do
It
that.
can
Yeah, I'll
wait
let
a
that
minute.
handle that
Yeah.
tomorrow. And so even just learning that skill of how do I calculate, how do I understand what the uncertainty looks like in my life, and then how do I build a plan that acknowledges that so that already just decreases the stress and anxiety of feeling like, right, I check one thing off and three more things comes on. Now
Yeah.
we just get to change our path of how we're getting from point A to point B, but we have the space to do it.
Yes. I love that. And I've heard you say on your podcast that you don't work past about 2 p.m.
2. Mhm.
So if you're running this business where you have helped 10,000 women, you're clearly really making the most of the time. So you've got this like 4 hours built in for one thing and two for another. And then you're doing your podcast and helping your clients and all these things. So I'm saying that just to say what a great example you are of someone who's in alignment with her family and a business that she loves and not overwhelmed. Just to say, everybody listening, it's possible. It's
It
possible.
is, and, I always share we run the business using the exact same planning framework I teach for women to use in their lives.
Yeah.
So, we do the same weekly planning process in the business. We do the same monthly planning process. I have 3 contractors who are all working moms. 2 of them homeschool, and
Love
the
it.
2 that are homeschooling have 2 children that they're each homeschooling. But we are all that's part of working here at the Pink Bee, you've gotta be using the top framework. And so we build and plan the business the same way that we teach people to build and plan their lives, which gives us the freedom to, at any point, someone on the team could wake up and say, I've got a family emergency, and the business is going to operate
Yeah.
just
It'll
fine
just keep
because
going.
of what we've put in place. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and another example too of you're not doing this all by yourself. If you're doing this all by
Yeah.
yourself, you'd have to work a lot more hours or do less or something. So
Yeah, and it's
you're
interesting. So, one of the things I learned from you that I love is that fit part, right? That you
yeah, of
teach, the
building
lover fit.
fitness. Yeah.
Yeah. When I decided to start, like to actually do this. Like, okay, I'm going to build this business. I'd worked in enough software startups that I've lived on the 80-hour a week, sleeping on the couch in the office. I did that in my 20s. I'm like, I don't want this. And I don't want to build something that isn't in alignment with the harmony I want in my life. And so what that looked like for the business early on, because it was just me, as every business that starts, it's always just
Yes.
you. I was a true solopreneur. And I'd be in rooms and masterminds and, courses with other women building businesses. And what it meant for the first couple years is my business was built slower than theirs because I knew my core value was I wasn't going to get sucked into the hustle.
Yeah.
I would work during school hours and that was it. But because of that, it allowed me to be very intentional and thoughtful about what I said yes to. I have much better boundaries in business than I do in my personal life. I execute your love and fit well with the business because I'd get this great idea and go, well, hang on. Do I love it? And can I fit this in a 25-hour work week? Or am I creating something that I'm going to hate? And so that meant I moved slow, but very intentional for the first couple years. But what I find fascinating is over this last year in particular, a lot of those women that were building businesses alongside of me, they're done. They've burnt out. They've
Interesting.
taken a sabbatical. They've all been like, I burned it down. I hate this. I'm miserable. And now my business has, 10x'd.
Yeah.
And I haven't worked any more than I did starting it.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great case for practicing what you preach and following your own
Yeah.
system has really worked for you, which is amazing. When I first switched from corporate to my own business, I really had to catch myself because I had such a habit of overworking.
Yes.
And it was
Yes.
at the beginning when I had basically no clients, maybe one here or there, and I'd be going back to my office after my kid went to bed. I was like, I literally don't have anything to do. But my body is like, okay, the kids are in bed. It's time to do some work. I'm like, wait, I could just go watch TV.
Yeah, or like bring the laptop to the couch. Well, I'll work
Yes.
while or whatever. They'd be like,
What am I doing? And now, I mean, you couldn't pay me $1 million to do that, but it was really a habit that I had to break.
yes.
Yes.
I think any woman that's leaving a corporate environment where there's just so much expectation put on you. Yeah, I had to rewire.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
had to rewire my self-worth, right? We live in a society where our worth is intrinsically implied by how productive somebody else thinks you are.
Absolutely.
And so we feel like if I'm not, quote, producing, I'm not worthy.
Yeah.
And so it's a lot to
Yeah.
undo.
Yes. And I used to always tell people what I used to do. Oh, I used to have this insert whatever impressive job instead of like what I am because I didn't feel good enough about it or something. I don't know. It was weird.
Right? Yes.
It was a very strange transition. I'm glad I got here, but it was a strange transition. Okay, we are
Yeah.
just about out of time. I just want to ask you the same two questions that I ask every guest on the podcast. The first one is, what is something you do when you feel overwhelmed to help yourself feel better?
I do puzzles.
Oh, that's a good one.
I love like either jigsaw puzzles or logic puzzles, or I go practice. I started taking cello lessons 2 years ago, or
Oh
I
my
go play my
gosh.
cello.
Okay. And does that just take your mind off the overwhelm?
Yeah.
Is that just makes you focus on something else? I mean, doing a puzzle sounds like total overwhelm to me. So that is
It
such
does.
a good
For some people,
yes,
that's a hard
it's
no.
such a
It's
good
a
example
total
of like
relaxer for me.
everybody has their thing and you just have to know what your thing is. Okay. And then you've already answered this in a couple of different ways, but you may have even more. What is something that you do in order to enable yourself to do less or same time?
I honor my plan.
Okay.
Like I really honor the time I spend building my weekly plan includes the things I have to do, includes the things I want to do, and it includes me. I'm in my calendar every day, all week long. And so what I do for myself is I honor the plan that I built. I don't go back and work just a little bit more because I know that, now, am I perfect? Of course not. I know whenever I don't, I am not who I like.
Yeah, absolutely. Even a little bit of overworking, and I find I'm annoyed with my kids that have nothing to do with it or whatever. That's great. I love that so much. Okay, so tell us if people are like, I want to learn that feminine time management system. Tell us where they can find your program or whatever else where they can find you. You have a great podcast, so tell us everything.
Okay, well, I do. If you're listening to this, obviously you're probably a podcast fan. So you can come find me at Work Life Harmony. It's on all the podcast players. And we also put it out on YouTube if you like more, video type format. I will say my signature program is called the TOP program. TOP stands for Time Management, Organization, and Productivity. You can just look up thetopprogram.com and read all about the program. I always tell people, I know the program's great, but let's be honest, every teacher is not a great fit for every student. And so I actually also have an app in the App Store. It's a free app and it's called the Pink Bee, all one word, BEE. And in there, I have 2 free trainings. So it's a great way for you to, I kind of introduce you to the whole top framework in there. You can see the 3 core pillars, all 9 components, but it also introduces you to me and my style of teaching and how I do that as kind of I think it's a great first step to decide if, investing your energy in learning a new time management system is the right thing for you as well.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Okay, we'll put the links to all of that in the show notes. And thank you so much for being on today. I really admire your work and what you're putting out into the world.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Overwhelmed Working Woman podcast. If you want to learn more about my work, head over to my website at michellegothier.com. See you next week.